All right. Welcome, welcome, everybody. My name is Jessica Wright, and I will be moderating today's event. For anybody who's attended presentations this week or going to attend presentations over the summer, you're going to hear my same intro every time, so I apologize. I'll try to mix it up as we go along. I will be moderating today's event. I've been with Corning for almost 6 years now, spending about 70% of my time with campus and events. I primarily manage our talent community, so if you've ever been to our booth at a career fair, you definitely have received follow-up emails and newsletters from me. Just a few housekeeping notes. We are putting everybody on mute, and we do ask that you remain on mute for the duration of the presentation. We would like this to be interactive and engaging, so please feel free to send questions in the chat. If you're unsure how the chat function works, there's a little bar that pops up at the bottom of the WebEx screen, and the chat will be located on the right side of the screen. You can adjust the view and kind of drag it up just so you can see more than a couple lines, which I like to do. We highly encourage video from everybody. Our staff is on. We would love to see your faces, so don't be shy. Today's presentation I am super excited for, and just judging by the amount of interest in this course, you all are as well. We all want a top-notch resume that stands out during the application process, and today you'll learn from our recruiters some of their best practices on formatting tips, appropriate verbiage, how to tailor your resume, and so much more. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions in advance. I know we sent that out a little bit last minute, but it really did help guide our presentation, and we hope to address those questions during the presentation today. So with that, I will kick it over to our presentation team.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. So hi, my name's Jackie. I'll be one of the presenters today, and we're all just going to give you just a little quick bio on ourselves before we go ahead and get started. So I've been with Corning for about 2.5 years, but I have over 10 years in staffing and recruitment experience. For Corning, I primarily support the OFC division within optical communications and a wide variety of roles that we recruit for, and even my recruiting background has spanned IT, pharmaceutical, professional services, engineering, construction, manufacturing. So have experience in a lot of different industries and have looked at many resumes over the years. So definitely looking forward to kind of sharing some tips and best practices with you. I'll turn it over to my 2 other colleagues that are going to be presenting today. So Tom, if you want to go next, and then we'll get started with after Don talks as well. Tom, are you there?
Sure, I am now. I had to unmute my line. So, glad and excited to have everybody. So I've been with Corning just over a year. And I handle our executive recruiting for all of Corning. So I get the unique opportunity of being able to work across all of the business lines and working with those businesses. And I've been recruiting probably 25 years plus. So hopefully some tips and things that we can give you today you'll find helpful.
And Don, you there?
Oh, yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, great. Yeah, my name's Don, and I've been with Corning, for 3 years, 3+ years. My business lines are primarily, I'm running a lot of different business right now, but primarily finance, accounting. I'm doing some sales and marketing, and I've recently taken on some of our plant functions for logistics and whatnot. I started my career about 15 years ago with a company called EDS, and our primary client was General Motors. So my background is in automotive engineering for the recruitment side of the house, but I'm happy to work on anything, and I really enjoy my job, and I'm very happy to be here as well to help you guys out.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Tom. So you'll hear from myself first. Don will kind of jump in, and then Tom towards the end, and at the end of the presentation, we're all going to get together and answer some of the great questions that we had. So you'll hear from us quite a bit throughout the presentation today. So let's think about, what we really want to make sure that you take away from this today. And I think the biggest thing that we all agreed upon is that there is there's no one magical way to write a resume. I wish we could give you the template that's going to get you all jobs, you know, at the first application. But I think the biggest thing that we want you to take away from this presentation today is that resumes should be really authentic and true reflections of who you are as a candidate. We're going to give you a lot of great tips and suggestions on things that you might want to consider, and take all that on board, and really think about, how do I apply this to who I am and what I want to tell my future employer, so that you make that great first impression, and ultimately can get that job that you're looking for. So keep that in mind as we go through, and as you continue, you know, throughout your career in writing resumes, you know, really stay true to kind of who you are, and that will really shine through on a resume. So let's think about some resume do's, some things that you want to think about doing when you're writing a resume. We collectively as a team and through our experience really like employment summaries and skill summaries tailored towards your goals and experience. I think that really represents well on a resume. We really would encourage everyone to have someone proofread your resume using spell check for grammar, checking for misspelled words. I think everybody has that natural tendency to maybe miss one or two things. So just having that second set of eyes to look over it can make a difference. They will probably catch something that you just can't believe you missed. But I think that, you know, even myself, years into a recruiting career, I will still always have someone proofread my resume. So definitely something we want to think about. We would encourage the use of action words. And we, at the end of the presentation, will send out an email, and there are some great reference links in there. And one of those reference links gives you a blog that was written, and it goes through about 240 resume words that you want to think about using. And it kind of breaks them down into different categories when they would be most appropriate to use. So examples of improved, analyzed, built, aligned, deployed, initiated. Really think about how you can kind of step away from maybe the traditional kind of managed or executed. Those words are great and perfectly fine to use when appropriate, but get creative and you know, use some of those other synonyms out there that are really just going to enhance your resume. This definitely, I think, is going to be a hot topic of discussion and something that we'll kind of continue to talk about through the Q&A, but keeping your resume to a reasonable length. 1 or 2 pages as your experience grows is fine. I think that if there is enough relevant experience to carry your resume to 2 pages, that is okay. For those that are maybe earlier in their career, I think you'll find that a 1-page resume suffices, and it really, you know, communicates your experience without being too lengthy. So as we go through the presentation, I think we'll come back to this. You'll see why that probably is going to make sense. But that 1 to 2, we have found typically is you know, what you want to aim to have. Being consistent with formatting, line spacing, font type, font size, indentations, all of those little details that make the resume look polished. If you are the type of person that isn't really great with formatting, again, maybe find somebody that can proofread your resume and help you with that. There's some good templates in Word, some resume writers that maybe will kind of help format things. Be careful that they don't send you too far down the other path of having it be maybe too uniquely formatted that it's difficult to read. But again, consistency is key. When somebody looks at your resume, it should be really easy to read. It shouldn't be confusing, and everything should look consistent. So just double check that as you're proofing. Rewards, awards, recognition, accomplishments, training. Think about all of those great things that you have done in school and internships and in jobs that you've held. Maybe even keep a separate list of those running throughout a calendar year so that you don't forget. And then you can really pick the top ones that are most relevant to a job that you're applying for. But be sure to list those. Really, this is about you, again, telling your employer why they should hire you. And it's, it's kind of like your opportunity to brag about yourself a little bit. This is what I've accomplished. This is what I've done, all in line with why you're going to be a great candidate. And then last really big kind of do is update your resume often. I can't stress it enough. I think now for a lot of you, you're probably looking at your resume quite often. You're applying for internships. You're thinking about that first job post-graduation. But as you move into your career, and maybe you have a job for 3, 5, 7, 10 plus years, there's a lot of things that you are going to accomplish in that time, and time goes quite quickly. And then you may find yourself in a situation where, I need to update my resume. Really difficult to go back and think about all those things that you've done, and you might miss something really good that you want to add. No doubt you'll have to pare that down to really keep with that 1 to 2 pages. But again, I think if you update your resume often enough, you'll find that it's much easier to just make sure that you're hitting on all those key points that you want to. Jess, any questions pop up on this section yet? Or are we good so far?
Not yet. We are good so far.
Okay, cool. I think a lot of the questions we will hit on towards the end, but if anybody does have a burning question, pop it in the chat, and Jess can certainly share it with the group. Some don'ts to keep in mind. So things that we really recommend that you take on board and consider maybe not doing when you're writing a resume. So definitely, don't over-exaggerate your skills and experience, as well as job titles. Again, be really just truthful and factual. It will pay off for you in leaps and bounds in the long run. Don't sell yourself above what you've actually done. Really stick to those skills and experience that you have. Might be an obvious one, but don't steal or plagiarize from somebody else or something online. So don't copy and paste something from another resume, or use something word for word that again isn't in your own words and format. Repeating bullet points for roles and responsibilities. So for example, if you've had 2 internships and they were maybe a bit similar, the thought might be, well, I did the same thing in both internships, and somebody may copy and paste a bullet point or 2 from one to the next. Try to make them different. Try to make them very specific to that job. Think about things that you've done different in both of those roles. Really utilize that space on your resume versus just listing the same thing over and over again. We will talk a little bit about this later in the presentation, but cutting and pasting job descriptions from an employer and putting it into your resume. So the idea behind that is, again, write it in your own words. Think about what you have done and executed, not just this is A, B, and C that the job really warrants. Think about, how did I take maybe these responsibilities, and what did I do? How did I execute them? So just, again, be a little careful about copying and pasting things. Don't forget to include your contact information. So probably something that we maybe all forget from time to time is just making sure that you have a phone, email, address, and a LinkedIn profile link on there. All really, really great things. Make sure that your phone number is active. Make sure your voicemail is active, and it's not full, so people can leave you a message if they want to reach out to you to schedule an interview. Make sure your email address is professional and appropriate for applying to jobs. So if you have something that's maybe a little bit more on a personal level, think about maybe creating a more professional one that you would put on a resume. All right. Thinking about format. So think about when you're looking at this 1 to 2 page resume, your font. You really want to make sure that your font is consistent. Some of the more common ones that we see used, so Times New Roman, Arial, Cambria, there's a lot of perfectly fine fonts out there. It does not have to be one of those 3. Make sure that you look at that font as a whole. Sometimes some characters look completely normal, and then other letters and characters may be a little bit harder to read. So just double check that as you're choosing a font. I think there's room to be creative there. But again, just make sure that there isn't anything that's going to be difficult to read. Same goes for legibility, sizing of fonts, something that somebody doesn't have to look at really hard to read. If you think about in today's technology, a lot of resumes are on a computer screen, sometimes on a phone, can be quite small in terms of size and font. So while people can make things bigger to read them on their screen, just keep that in mind. Try to use reasonable sizes as you're creating your resumes. We really like, as a team, we really agreed on this. We really like bullet points to highlight work experience. So rather than typing a paragraph, and I think this is probably a pretty common practice, but using those bullet points to really highlight your experience and the things that you did within your jobs and internships is really good best practice for format. And then make sure that you're really clearly listing the name of the employer, location, and the job title that you held. So make sure that that's super clear at the top. We're going to show you some examples of resumes so you can see different ways that can be done. But just really keep that in mind. And again, make sure it's as clear as possible. Dates on a resume, my best practice is put the month and the year. Instead of just putting a year. If you're still currently working at a job, put present. If you've left that job, make sure you put an end date so somebody knows that you're no longer there. It leaves out a lot of room for questions and interpretation when someone's looking at your resume, and it makes it really, really clear, and they're able to kind of understand that work progression. Okay. Jess, I'm going to pause. I think I saw a few questions popping up. Any that we should take a look at real quick?
Yep, some really good questions that I think we could answer pretty quickly.
Awesome.
Somebody asked about an example resume that's easy on the eyes, but I know we have examples coming up. One for so somebody said that they used to have their address as a form of contact, but was told to remove it because most people do not really use it anymore to contact you. What is the right thing to do in that situation?
Yeah, great question. So no doubt, nobody's going to send you a letter in the mail. While I think getting mail is wonderful, they'll probably call or email you. The address is nice. I think it's just kind of a formal part of the resume. It does let an employer know where you're currently based out of. Honestly, sometimes it's helpful because if I'm sitting on the East Coast and recruiting candidates that are on the West Coast, my 8 a.m. is your 5 a.m. and I would really love to make sure that I'm not calling you at 5 a.m. To talk to you about a job. So I just think having it on there, I've never encountered a situation where it wasn't a good idea, and I just think it's still a good best practice to have. So yes, you might not get mail, but I would still put your resume on an address, or put your address on a resume.
For the location of the employer, would you suggest listing both the city and the state?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's always good.
Instead of dates, do you think they could put summer, winter, fall, or spring, or do you think dates are preferable?
Probably, I'm assuming maybe they're thinking like in terms of an internship or a co-op, so it's like a spring co-op. I think for internships and co-ops, totally fine. You could just put spring co-op, you could put summer co-op, you could put dates. I think either is totally fine. I think when you're thinking about employment, so post-graduation in the workforce, you want to use months and years. But when you're talking about those co-ops and internships, specifically, I think that would be okay to use the seasons if that feels more organic for you.
Okay.
Great question.
What is the right amount of detail in a resume? Like maybe a recommended number of bullets?
Let me think about that. We might touch on that a little bit further in the presentation. I'm going to park that question in case we feel like we don't cover that. I think the right amount of content will at some level speak to how you can get your resume to that 1 to 2 page length. So if you only had one job, I don't think you need a 2-page resume for one job. So there's no right or wrong there. Let's look at some of the example resumes. I'm going to make a note, resume length with bullets, and then we can kind of come back to that if we need to circle back around, because it is a good question. I think it just kind of depends on experience, but let's look at some of the examples too, because I think that might help kind of get some clarity.
There is one more question that I think I don't recall if we cover. There are a couple others that we do cover. So I'm going to just kind of copy in any questions that I think we might cover, just as an FYI for the group and for you guys. I'm going to copy and paste it and put it in a separate window. And if I don't feel like we've covered it, I'll ask it. But one question that I think was really good. So if you're currently working at a job, should your action words be present tense or past tense? And they've heard different things about this.
I think present if you're currently working. Tom, Don, I'll have you guys jump in on this if you feel differently. My initial answer is present because you're currently working there. Am I thinking about that right, Tom, Don?
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree for sure.
Okay. Yep, Tom agrees as well. Okay, so present. Yep. Great question.
And I kind of just grabbed the other ones that I didn't, so people don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm just grabbing them because I do believe I've gone through the presentation with the presenters. I think we're going to cover it all. And in case we don't, we can circle back. So
awesome. Okay, we will definitely do that. Resume content. So going a little bit further beyond format, some things we want you to think about in terms of the content of your resume. And some of this we talked a little bit about, but I think it's worthy just highlighting a bit further. So we talk a lot about summaries, objectives, bullet points. All of those things should really be kind of that meat of your resume. Again, we'll look at some examples, and then I know that we have the opportunity to do a little bit of a resume review. So again, a lot of this is going to depend on your experience, but keep in mind those kind of really critical overarching themes of a resume and the things that you want to make sure that are on there. Your resume should be, the best way that we can think about it is brief and amazing. So again, that 1 to 2 pages, it is not supposed to be a book. It is not supposed to be super lengthy. There was a Glassdoor article that Tom had shared with us, 6 seconds to make a first impression with a resume. So when somebody pops up that resume on their screen, that first 6 seconds is where that first impression is made, which I just think is super interesting and all the more reason to make sure that everything is really crisp and clean because it's going to set the tone for somebody then continuing to read your resume a bit further. Listing successes at the top of your resume. So again, really depending upon your experience, the role that you're applying for, your background, but if there's some really good successes, awards, accomplishments, and you want to put that to the top of your resume, by all means, it's going to stand out and it's going to make a good first impression. I think this question came up a lot in the questions that we received. I think it's something, again, we'll talk about a little bit more. If your experience outweighs your education, you can list it first. Your education does not have to be listed at the top of your resume. Again, the more experience you grow in your career, you don't necessarily need your education at the top of your resume. If you are newly graduated, you have a couple of internships, and you think that you would like to highlight your education, by all means. We still like to see the successes, skills, accomplishments maybe a little bit higher. Again, there's no right or wrong here, but think about what's most important in your portfolio of experience and education as it relates to the job. And if it's an entry-level job, then maybe that education weighs a little bit higher. If you have some experience, maybe that education isn't quite as important. Your experience is more important, and you're going to bump that to the top of your resume. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You you can change and move this as your experience grows. Again, we talked a little bit about this earlier, which is making sure that we're not using those very typical action words. Again, they have a time and place, but get creative. Use some other really good action words to describe your experience. Let's talk about adding a GPA to your resume. So if it's a good GPA, I would add it. If it's an okay GPA, you don't think it's going to really boost you to the top of the list. Let's say it's not a requirement in a job description, so some jobs may require it, some jobs may not. You may opt to not include it. Totally up to you. I know that's a question that we see a lot, and it is a personal preference, but I would caution you that if the GPA isn't so great, or it's not maybe like really high up there, maybe just don't add it. And that's totally up to you. If you have a university degree, you don't have to list your high school anymore. So if you haven't completed a university degree, I think most of our participants here are in process of a university degree. So honestly, as soon as you graduate, or you even can put your anticipated graduation date, you can drop the high school. That's not necessarily relevant because you've obtained that university degree. Don't include a photo of yourself. We tend to find that most employers prefer no photos for jobs in English-speaking countries. Now, I think globally there is probably a different take on that. Different hiring managers in different countries, different HR departments in different countries definitely feel differently about that. Across the board, we tend to say no picture. We have LinkedIn, which is usually kind of checked in conjunction with a resume from time to time. You're putting your LinkedIn profile link on your resume, so someone can very easily go to LinkedIn and kind of review that in addition to your resume, and your picture is there. Especially if you're keeping your resume to 1 to 2 pages, don't take up that extra space with a picture. Just focus on leaving that off and keeping it on your LinkedIn profile. I saw a lot of questions funneling in. I saw one, so I'm just going to pull that and answer it really quick, Jess. So the question was, if you are receiving a master's or a graduate degree, do you drop the bachelor's? No, I would leave your bachelor's on and then just add the master's, the MBA, the PhD in addition to. So anything post-high school, you can continue to compile that education on your resume. Anything pre-bachelor's, you may want to leave off, if that helps.
Yep. Just want to kind of interject too really quick. We are getting a lot of questions, and we're so lucky on this presentation because we have multiple presenters. So just for the participants on the call, keep an eye on the chat because a lot of your questions are getting answered by Dawn and Tom, who aren't currently presenting. So we can make sure that we get through all of the content.
Yeah. So
and then I'll just pull out whatever's really big and important. So
yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to John to kind of walk through some of our example resumes. Before I do, Jess, because again, we might get to a lot of these questions. Was there anything, I can't see the whole chat here in my view. Was there anything that I can answer really quick before I turn it over? If not, we can come back to them at the end.
So they did ask about, you know, kind of like with GPA, I think the standard, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is anything below a 3.0 you can leave off because that's typically the target for most companies that they're looking for 3.0 or above.
Mm-hmm. Yep, correct.
And then, you know, make sure you keep both your bachelor and your master's or PhD. Yes, you will have access to this recorded presentation because there's so much information.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about languages. If we know and speak, and Tom made a great point, you just have a bullet for the languages you speak because that's definitely important.
Absolutely. If you're bilingual, trilingual, yes, highlight that. That's amazing and something that your employers are also going to want to know. And Kelly just brought up a good point. Whether it's spoken, like if you can read and write in the language, great to know. And it can be listed under, you could probably list it under skills. Some jobs actually ask for somebody who is maybe bilingual in 2 different languages. So maybe you want to bring that to the top of your resume if that's relevant for that job. You can also put your fluency level. So maybe you're conversational, but you're not completely fluent. Those little types of things you may want to call out too. So if a job is looking for someone that is bilingual in English and Spanish, and they're truly looking for someone that's bilingual, if you don't want to misrepresent if you're not fluent, but you're conversational. And then they can make that determination if they think that that's going to be a good fit. But just little things that you might want to keep in mind depending on the job. So yeah, great question about that. Any other ones, Jess, you think?
There are.
If not, we can keep going.
Yeah, I think we should keep going. If I see like big trends, I'll try to pull them up. I know that Tom and Dawn, on the interest of time, it's fine if we go over. We can totally do that. But if maybe we could save most of the questions so we can get through the content. We can save questions for the end in case people do have a hard stop at 3.
And also, I know we'll talk about it towards the end, but just as a reminder, so you're going to have the ability to submit your resume and do a one-on-one resume interview with somebody on our TA team. So if you have a lot of burning questions, jot them down. If we don't get to them today, you'll have that one-on-one time, and we can try to walk through them with you as well. So just keep that in mind, and we'll make sure that you guys all have those questions answered. So Dawn, I'm going to turn it over to you for our resume review. We're going to take a look at a few example resumes. Don's going to walk you through them.
Thank you, Jackie.
Sure.
Before I jump into this first resume, there was a question that is very applicable, and it's a good segue to this section. Someone had asked, and I didn't get a chance to respond typing. I just wasn't typing quick enough, but someone had asked about a chronological resume versus a functional, I think is what the question was pertaining to. I prefer looking at chronological resumes, but I have seen some folks get hired using the functional. Now, the difference between the two is the chronological takes your work experience from your present employer to your past employers down the line, whereas functional strictly stipulates or talks about your skills. Let's say if it's in finance or accounting, it will talk about different areas that they specialized in, and in doing so, they'll have bullet points documenting, well, I was a CPA responsible for this, that, and the other. So there's a decision to be made there down the road. I would say for an early career, an entry-level type candidate, I would go chronological for sure, and maybe consider functional down the road. Tom, feel free to jump in as an executive, recruiter. You've had a lot of experience with maybe those type of resumes. What's your thoughts on that topic?
I think you said it best. I think chronological probably is easier to read. That's kind of what we think, what's been your current job, what's been your job prior to that, and so forth. And then we expect that we'll see education, prior to that. So I think it just flows better. And I know Jackie talked about easy on the eyes. And so, again, not to say you can't, but again, it's a preference.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. So when I was preparing some resumes to show off here, it was really difficult. We had so many good resumes. A lot of them were unique, but certain things jumped out at us as a team, looking at what we prefer and what we look at and what will help you get to the top of the list of a hiring manager. So the first one we're looking at is actually a guy that I helped place here at Corning. He's a finance manager. Now, this is more of an experienced candidate, so it might look a little different. We're going to show you some other resumes that will pertain to early career and entry level. So for example, now at the very top, we blocked out names and stuff like that. So at the very top in the middle would have been the gentleman's name, maybe I don't think he included his full address. I think he listed those city, state. I know that question came up earlier. Maybe in the left, at the very top, blocked out was a phone number. Of course, you want to have your email as well. That's updated. Now, one thing I would suggest, and I don't recall seeing it on this one, was a LinkedIn. Yeah, so this one did not have a LinkedIn profile link. I'm a firm believer of having that included underneath your, your actual email address, okay? So like I said, I like to see that. What also attracted us was the right underneath the very top there is a paragraph, very strong summary. I'm a fan of looking at a maybe 3 to 4 sentence, a paragraph, if you will, a summary of what you bring to the table. What's your, what are your skills and what is your experiences, perhaps kind of summarized in a quick capsule, so that that will intrigue me to want to go on and read further into your skills or your job experience. Remember, now this guy is he's been in the workforce a little while, so it's a little different. So he has some experiences to offer. All right, so what I really liked about this as well is core competencies. That's something I'm attracted to as a recruiter. Now, all recruiters are different. They may have, some may not like that and read right past it, but I still think that's a valuable, it's a valuable option for you to put in your resume to help you be identified as someone they want to talk to. So core competencies can be also known as skill summary, can also be known as area of expertise as well. I've seen it listed in a number of ways. So as you can see from this one, it's a little bit small on my screen, but you can see he's listing all its different financial areas of expertise. Then from there, what I like to see, and this is exactly how I would do it, is the name of the employer. Then we have the dates using a month and year to present, for example, his job title. And then he also put in parentheses, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so he documented in parentheses what this company does. That's a little add-on I think is beneficial maybe for some hiring managers who may not be familiar with that company. But let's say, for example, we're in the glass industry here at Corning, and if someone had worked for maybe a supplier to a glass industry, that might be something that a manager would be interested in seeing. So I think that's an optional thing to add, but I liked it. And then as you saw, his approach was having a 1 sentence, maybe 1 or 2 sentence, another summary, and then he wrote, I'm trying to read it here, accomplishments included, and that's when he went into his bullet points with action items. So the first one I see is, what's it say, consolidated. That's a good action word there, like consolidated, simplified, performed, established. And he tried not to repeat those action words often. I mean, you can do it on occasion, but not in the same paragraph would be my suggestion. One thing that I would suggest maybe going forward that he could have done is maybe have more bullet points. Well, he's got 7 there to begin with, it looks like, but if I can count correctly. But, for your most current employer, that's where you want to have 7 or 8 bullet points perhaps. And then the next one, because that's a little further back in your career, maybe have 4 or 5 or 6. And then as you get lower, as you see his last one there, towards his education, there's only 3 bullet points. It's just a matter of saving time that way, or not time and space, basically. So this one is a good 1.5 pager. He did not go past 2, which is our recommendation, which I like. I see resumes every day. Some of them will have 3 pages. Some of them will have 4. Now, those are really tough to read, and managers only have so much time, so they're not going to go through and read every one or every word. But so our suggestion, again, for experienced candidates would be to have it, a 1.5 pages, maybe 2 pages, and really focus on, having good action words and descriptions for what you have accomplished and achieved. And that's going to help a manager, make a decision and say, I want to talk to this guy. And then last but not least, education we have at the bottom, because this, again, is an experienced candidate. So let's move on to slide 10. Which is, I don't think, can I do that? Or, oh, you got it, okay. So slide 10 is an interesting one. This guy is, I didn't work with this candidate, but it's a data science professional, IT, and you can see it's a little different looking. It's really easy on the eyes. I liked it when I looked at it. I believe in the left-hand corner was his name and his address and, where he lived and all that. Then you saw like 4 different boxes at the top. They're boxed out. That's going to be the phone number, probably a LinkedIn page, his, his email address, etc. And then on the summary on the left, I think that's really easy to read. You can see, point blank, data science and analytics leader. Wow. So if I'm looking for someone in that profession, I'm intrigued. I'm going to want to read that. I want to see what's going on. And then furthermore, you can see his education progression there from a BA to a BE. He's got he or she has the master's degree program and MBA, and then the core competencies listing. So this is a unique way to do it. And we were talking earlier, there is no right or wrong resume. This is just something that really, if you're competing with 100 people, maybe this one will stand out. So I read through this resume. I really like the action items there. It's in paragraph format. Of course, I'm old school. I've been in recruiting for 15 years. I like bullets. I like to see the bullets. It was a little tough for me at first to read that, but it is a one-pager, so I got through it. Now, if they were to put bullets in there, we're not looking at a 2-pager. So there's give or take in that. I think it's real important that the content was really strong, though. A question had come up earlier in Jackie's presentation there, talking about, do we add older work experiences? And that's what this gentleman, or I'm not sure if it's a gentleman or not, but that's what this individual did. And they put, as you see at the very bottom there, like quality engineer. It gives you dates, gives you the company name, the job title. And that at least allows the manager to know he's been, or I keep saying he, but this individual keeps, or this individual had been in a progression in his career. So I don't see a problem with that. Actually, my resume, I do something similar, but I add at least 2 bullets in each of my early career stuff just to give an idea. And mine right now is about 1 3/4 pages. So I probably need to cut it back a little bit, but we'll see about that. Let's see, was there anything else? I love the format on this. It looks nice. It's easy to read. I think it's slick, looks professional, and I was intrigued when I saw it. All right, so if you could help me out, yeah, the next one. Let's see here. This one's an intern. So we've got a candidate here that we were working with for an internship. As you can see, we blocked out some names and stuff. But what I liked about this and we liked about it is you have, because this individual's still in school, we have a home address and we have the school address listed for points of contact. I think that's important to have. Obviously, you want to be accurate with as we mentioned earlier, you want to make sure everything's working. If you have a number listed for your phone, make sure your voicemail box is up to date. I've called quite a few people, no, not quite a few, but I've had a few in the past where I'm trying to pursue and I couldn't leave a message because the mailbox wasn't set up or something like that. So anyway, so that's this part I was going to talk about. Oh, the education. So as we see as an early career type candidate or an internship candidate, we have education right there up top. We have NC State University, which location, because I believe there's different locations for various schools, for example. We see that this individual is in the chemical engineering program. I would almost recommend if there was a major and a minor, be sure to include your minor, what your emphasis is for your pursuit of the degree. We got the cumulative GPA there. I've seen some people put cumulative as well as their major GPA as well. I'm not sure if managers really, if that's really important, but I find it intriguing to see that the breakdown when I'm looking at for internships. That is, okay. Let's see, anticipated date of graduation. I think maybe Jackie mentioned that earlier, but just to reiterate, that's real important. A lot of, for example, in finance, a lot of the internships that I work on, we need to present candidates that are either in their sophomore status right now, will be junior in the fall, for example. So that's why that's important to me to know. Instead of, I want to connect with you for future reference, but for a manager to really consider you for an internship here at Corning, at least in the finance world, you need to be a junior or a senior if you're going to be pursuing an MBA, for example. All right, let's see what else. So I really like this resume. You can see we've got, you know, the location of their former internship. This person chose to use May through July. You can maybe use summer 2019 as an option. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that. We got 3 bullet points. That's a good number for an internship. I mean, let's face it, these guys are there for 3 or 4 months, maybe 2 or 3 months. It's going to be hard to have like an internship with 12 bullet points. So keep it concise, but really focus on what you accomplished. And let's see here. So how are we doing on time? We're getting closer. So on the bottom, clubs and activities. So, you know, I'm a firm believer of adding that, you know, adding those type of activities and clubs. And, you know, my wife was in a sorority system when she went to Central Michigan. So she's, you know, she's really talked to me about a lot of the opportunities she had for philanthropy, for community service, for running projects, doing fundraising. Those are all tangible, and those are skills and attributes we look for. So I know it'd be tough to add that part in right here, but I have seen resumes where they talk about where I was the vice president, or I was the president of this chapter. Here's what we worked on. We accomplished this for United Way, or whatever. I like that, and I know managers have provided me with positive feedback on that type of stuff. Okay, so last but not least, we have slide number 12, and there we go. Yeah. So this is another example of an early career or entry level type resume. So therefore, we have education up top. Similar. This one's definitely similar, but I like the expected dates of graduation. It's just we're giving you different looks at formatting. My only suggestion might have been to have I like having the bullets indented a little bit just for visual purposes, but it's clean. It's accurate and consistent. So and again, I mentioned earlier about the most bullet points for the last position held. So this one, for example, there's 7. Then the second one listed only has 3. Then we come down and we have 5. So I might consider going 7, 5, 3. Just it's up to you as the individual. Something else, last but not least, is the hard skills. So that is important. I personally believe, and I know maybe Tom does, and Jackie and the rest of the team, you know, listing those skills, but ensuring that you're not, you know, exaggerating. You know, I've had people put on there, I'm a, you know, expert user of Excel, and then when we get down to it, they're not. So it's real important to, you know, put skills that maybe you've taken coursework in, or have had experiences with internships, or maybe you've gone out and proactively took a class, maybe an online class or a computer-based training type class. To me, that's important to have that on your resume for hard skills. You could also list it as technical skills. And then soft skills, you know, that's a little bit, it's an opportunity to brag about. I see this person has English and Spanish. It's funny, a lot of these soft skills are what we look for from a Corning perspective, part of our culture and our values and what we look for from individuals within. A lot of those are showing up in there, so that might be attractive to a manager. And then, of course, the activities there at the end. So these are good examples. I don't know, what's you guys' thoughts on that? Any questions, or do we want to move on? What's your thoughts there, Jessica?
I would say move on just for the interest of time so we can get through the deck. Tom's been doing a really good job of answering questions and trying to help out. Kelly and E, if you're on still, if you want to help out with answering questions too. I think we're getting to most of them, but I want to make sure we get to all the content before, if we could try to do that before 3, but it's okay if we do go over to answer questions. So.
Yeah, awesome.
Excellent.
Over to you.
Remember we talked about in the beginning, brief and amazing? Well, that's what I get. So we're going to do really talking about matching it to the job description. So, you do want to tailor it. Don't copy it, but tailor it. So we get a question, should I have multiple resumes for different jobs that I apply to? Absolutely. You want to customize it. There may be things in your background, your education, things that you've done that you highlight more for one job than you do another. So you definitely, it makes sense to do it. Again, highlight any skill sets, programs that you have experience with that's listed on that resume. Again, don't copy verbiage from the job description. So, do change it up so it doesn't look like you just took the job description and just pasted it over. It's okay that you, again, highlight any experience you have that coincide with the job description. Again, make it so your relevant experience does stand out, or education. Make relevant experience, certifications, anything that can be highly visible. If you want to put that at the top, again, depending on the job that you're applying to, and if it makes sense to have that be more highlighted, absolutely I'd do that. Let's move on. So we didn't have this slide in here, and but with some great questions we had in advance, I went ahead and we created this. And so one of the questions was, there's this artificial intelligence, if you will, software that can just pull resumes in and out and highlight ones that they want. We're not aware of an AI software that can necessarily discard a resume for one reason or another. Now, you do have ATSs that can look at, one, if you have qualifying ATS questions that say, do you at least have a bachelor's? And if you have to say no, it may pull you out of the running for that position, but that was the requirement. So here's some points maybe to optimize your resume to keep it in an ATS, because what an ATS will do, and there's many out there and there's plenty of research on it, it basically will take your resume and then parse it into the system so the recruiter can then pull that out. And so one of the things to think about is what words is the recruiter going to use when they're in their search bar for the ATS to say electrical engineer. And so if you have a title that has that, or that's a job you're applying to, make sure those words are consistent so that, when a recruiter or a hiring manager, sometimes they have access to an ATS, they'll type that in. So anytime you can match those up, it will pull yours up to the top. To be able to, again, matching any applicable titles, skills, or other keywords on the job description, again, that increases your ranking within an ATS. Keep your formatting simple. And I know we saw a few questions. Somebody said put a text box. That can throw an ATS off. And so don't have any kind of funky formatting. We talked about using standard headings, avoid tables, columns, headers, and footers. So let's move on. I'm not able to read questions in that, but do we want to pause for a second to see what questions were on that slide, Jessica? PDF, is that a Word doc?
Yeah, that's a good one. And is it okay to use latex? I've never heard of latex, so I'm not really sure what that is.
I've not heard it as well.
I'm not familiar. I'll look it up while we're talking.
Okay, perfect.
The power of Google. So let's talk a little bit about resume versus LinkedIn. And I know we have other sessions, but we felt like we wanted to be able to at least address this, because LinkedIn, from a social media perspective, is huge. And so if you don't have a presence on LinkedIn, I would encourage you to do that. But you do want to make sure that information is linked up. Every recruiter, or at least most, will look at both. If they have your resume, they'll then pull up your LinkedIn profile to be able to look at that. So anytime it mirrors everything, it's just better. So even in your LinkedIn summary of your jobs, have some of those same bullets of your successes. Because sometimes recruiters, you may not be in their database, but they're searching LinkedIn. And so if they can find your profile and have enough detail on that, I can tell you that's one of the things I see is people just put the job in the title and they've been there for 10 years. So I ask, what have they really done? So let's see, quick apply. There is a feature a lot of employers will use that you can just click on a link and it'll automatically run your application through. It does use your LinkedIn profile. If you do that, still apply for the job so your resume is in the ATS, and also then have your resume attached to the LinkedIn profile, because again, it sometimes can make it easier. Maybe a recruiter is looking for a talented person, not in an ATS, but in LinkedIn. And if your resume is there, again, it just helps with them being able to contact you outside of LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, mark yourself open to new opportunities. Even if you're in a job or you're in transition, again, recruiters can sort by that, and so that's always helpful to be able to look at. So let's talk cover letters. We like them. We as a group, we don't see them enough. I would say 10% of the time I see a cover letter, but I will tell you when I get it, I read it. And so we do want you to personalize it and customize it. Don't use, yes, you can go grab one, but you need to make it relevant to that job. So if you're not going to spend the time to do it, then don't do a cover letter. But if you do, say a few words about your skills, what you've done, what your experience. The best one I saw just not that long ago, they did a little bit of an intro, and then they took the job description and listed some of the essential functions for the job, and then listed some experiences they had that were relevant to that. And so it made it easy reading to be able to do that. And then, make your closure strong and active. If you're really interested in the job, don't be afraid to say something about it. So don't just apply network. I know this is about applying for a job, but the one thing I can say is that if you're just applying to a job, I would say at minimum and we can use an average, but we may get 200 to 300 people to applying to one job. And so I know Jackie talked about that 6-second rule. That makes it hard. So the reality is it's just not everybody gets looked at enough. So is it fair? No, but it's reality. So networking really can make a difference. And so look through your network on LinkedIn. If you've got somebody that you know that works at an organization, reach out to them. Say, hey, I'm applying for this job. Can you tell me about the company? Don't just say, hey, can you help me? But ask them about the organization, network with them. And then that'll usually intrinsically have them go, hey, let me, I know the manager. I'll walk over there and tell them who you are. So we've talked about, if you haven't ever heard of 3 degrees of separation, it used to be 6 degrees, but I think with internet and technology, 3 degrees of separation just means that you're 3 degrees removed from almost anybody in the world. So I'll use Elton John. I'm 3 degrees removed from Elton John in some capacity, but I know someone who knows someone who knows someone that knows Elton John. So use that same philosophy when you network, because you don't want to give up and say, well, they don't know anybody, but who do they know? So reaching out to an employee of a company, asking them for advice. So maybe you don't know them, but you can say, hey, I see you work at XYZ company. I'm interested. Tell me what it's like to work there. But don't ask them for help yet. Find out what it is. And again, that intrinsically will probably go, they may ask you, have you applied to a job? Then you can kind of get into that. We talked about joining company emailing lists so that you can get updates and on the recruiter network. 20% of Corning's hires came from our talent community pipeline. So that's what people that didn't apply to a job that we found within our talent community, we reached out to, they interviewed with a manager and got hired. The other is follow target companies on LinkedIn for news updates and different things. And then really, I know I'm going to do this quickly because I want to be fair on time, but in LinkedIn, again, I know I talked about it, join groups, share articles, publish articles, engage with other people on posts. There's a thing called Lion, which just means open networker. You can actually, in an advanced search of LinkedIn, go in and find out who the Lions are. And those are open networkers who are open to networking with people. And so let's just say you're getting your PhD. You can actually do a search in LinkedIn, PhD Lion. It'll pull up every Lion within LinkedIn that shows you who they are, and you can connect with them. And then the other is, I know it's a paid service, but LinkedIn Premium is helpful. It allows you to connect with more people. It allows you to see more as well. So I know that's a quick LinkedIn tutorial, if you will, but I think that's it, right? Are we on questions?
Our recruiting team has been super awesome, so thank you, everybody. Etienne, Kelly, Don, Tom, who, Jackie, I know you're the presenter, so you can't really chime in, but thank you for answering questions as they've come in. I think that's been really, really helpful. Again, as Jackie said, if, you know, people who attend this, we're going to send out an email with this information. There's also some really helpful links that we'll send out, and we can make sure you're kind of keeping track of any specific questions too. And then you can ask the recruiter that you're assigned to. We did have a good question. Okay, so should we include the summer learning series into our resume? If so, where should it be included?
So it's in place of an internship. So my thought would be, it may not be a big entry, but you may be able to just, you know, as you would maybe have typically listed the internship for the summer, you could just, you know, list what you did to kind of fill that time. So you would list, you could say Corning / you know, virtual learning series or summer learning series. You could put summer 2019, and then you could put like a one bullet description, you know, in lieu of traditional internship due to COVID. You know, this was a targeted learning series. It doesn't have to be, very robust. You don't have to list all the sessions that you attended, but I do think that it shows that, you know, during these difficult times, there were things that you were participating in and doing, and hopefully, you know, these are really enhancing, you know, some of those kind of skills and knowledge that you would have gained a little bit during an internship. So I definitely would add it to a resume. During your one-on-one resume review with a specific member of the TA team, ask about that. We can kind of help you build that into your resume. We can help you maybe show you how that's going to fit with the particular format that you've selected. So for those on the call, it's an awesome question, and we can kind of help you build that in. And I'll just call out the screen up really quick. I know Jessica's going to email all of you, but keep in mind, if you do want to participate in that resume review session, here's some quick info. Send your resume by Sunday. You can send it to Jessica. There's her email address. Again, she'll reach out to you with this info. And then if you could just put in the subject line, Corning VLS resume review, and she'll get a lot of them. That way she knows where to kind of park your email and your resume until we can schedule a review session with you.
Okay, so there is one question that I did really like. So yes, it could be potentially listed as a learning externship. And as you're aware, if anybody needs people who have attended things, you know, we do have your registration. So we will, we're happy to help you out with, you know, some sort of certificate. And you'll also receive a certificate of completion for every single thing you attended and registered for, so you have to be registered. You will receive a certificate so you can bring that back to your university. If we did receive an internship that was later canceled, should we include that on the resume to show we had one, that we had received one? Yes, I would include it. Kelly answered that, sorry. And then this is actually very specific to Corning, so I think this is a really great question. Anything unique that you guys look for when hiring at Corning?
Anything you look for when hiring at Corning? It depends on the role. I can speak to maybe some of our technical engineering roles. Is, you know, beyond the traditional experience that would relate to the job, individuals that have a technical curiosity. So people that just are genuinely interested in the technical nature of a product, design, process. somebody that really can think on a maybe global or team environment. A lot of our roles involve working cross-functionally with different groups, and I would say it no matter what level. Just somebody that has that real ability to think about how their role plays a bigger part in a bigger picture, and then just the hunger and the drive to learn. There's constant learning in our careers, and I think that when we have really good, successful candidates interview with Corning, it not only shows on their resume, but also just in their ability to demonstrate how eager they are to learn and to build their skills and to grow within an organization. So I think, those are some kind of key things. Don, Tom, anything else that you guys see with your role?
The one thing I would say that, and I agree with everything you said, especially at the executive level, but I think at any level, if you even talk about Amazon as another large organization, is their kind of their values. And so if you go to Corning's site, you'll see it's quality, integrity, performance, leadership, innovation, independent. Corning actually interviews by those values. And so it's important for you as someone coming into Corning to know what they are and make any relevant experience that might attach themselves to those. Amazon does the same thing. So more organizations are doing that. So the more you understand about who the organization is and what kind of, so not just do you have the technical expertise or the experience, but how do you fit? And so and I know that's not always easy to articulate fit, but that's why I kind of went back to the values.
Yeah, awesome.
And that is pretty much it. Just as an FYI for the group, I will be sending out the email on Friday. I have a pretty packed schedule today and tomorrow, so I will be sending out that email Friday, but get started on your resume. I think you have enough to start working with, and then I'll also send out those helpful links and just kind of what to expect in terms of the resume review. But want to extend a huge thank you to our presenters, the rest of the recruiting team that jumped in to help out and answer some questions, and then just all of the participants. This was such a great session, really great questions, super engaging. So thank you all for attending and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.